Yes, my name's Caroline Gilby. One time I wanted to specialise in Italy because I've always had a passion for Italian wine. But
we were almost in the same world.
Almost.
Yeah.
Italian Wine Podcast. Chin Chin with Italian wine people.
Welcome to another installment of On the Road Special Edition hosted by Stevie Kim. She has traveled to one of the most beautiful Renaissance villas in Slovenia, where 13 producers from 2 countries have gathered to take part in the masterclass Grand Vertical Tasting of the finest Rebula wines. Listen in and enjoy the conversations on this Slovenian adventure in wine.
Welcome to Italian Wine Podcast. This is especially on the road edition. We are at Brda. And I've just had the pleasure of listening to and meeting Master of Wine, Caroline Gilby. I hope I didn't butcher your name. It's Gilby. Yeah, I knew that. I was like, shit. I was like, okay.
Don't worry.
Yeah, so it was fascinating because our paths had never crossed. I didn't even know there was a Master of Wine specialized in, kind of the Eastern European wines and grape varieties. And it turns out you are super specialist of Rebula or Rebula. I mean, Ribolla is easier in Italian.
Yes. Yeah.
And I thought it was fascinating because, of course, you've delved into the aspect of being an indigenous grape variety and the goods and the bads and how to promote it. So first of all, I would like for you to, if you don't mind, introduce yourself to our audience who are perhaps less familiar because there are a lot of Italian wine geeks from our audience, but perhaps have not crossed paths with you before, just like myself. So would you mind introducing yourself, where you're from, when you became an MW, and how you became to be an MW, and what you have been doing since?
Yes, my name's Caroline Gilby. I've been an MW since 1992. Started in the wine trade back then as a junior buyer, trainee wine buyer to start with, and my first buying responsibility was Eastern Europe because it was big business in the UK back then, but not very glamorous. So as the junior member of the team, that's where I cut my teeth buying wine. So I've been connected with the region for a long time now. And after a few years as a buyer, I left to become a freelance writer, and it gradually became obvious. At one time, I wanted to specialise in Italy because I've always had a passion for Italian wine. But
we were almost in the same world.
Almost.
Yeah.
But it turned out there were quite a lot of established writers already doing Italy. And then I had an opportunity to write on Eastern Europe for Tom Stevenson, and it snowballed from there. So the more I've been involved, the more fascinating I found it, because each country has come out of socialism and or communism in very different ways, shaped by their histories, their culture, and their new independence. So, and the wine revolution has been exactly that, a revolution.
So, before we do the deep dive into kind of the Rebula and all the different aspects and the interesting bits of Rebula, when you say Eastern European, your speciality, like what area encompasses Eastern European wines?
Yes, I like to say I cover Central and Eastern Europe because the likes of former Yugoslavia really see themselves as Central Europe rather than Eastern Europe. So, and former Yugoslavia includes Slovenia, where we are today, Croatia, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Kosovo, Serbia. I've forgotten somebody in there, and they'll never talk to me again, but that region. And then, well, to be honest, Croatia likes to describe itself as an Adriatic country. And then further east, you've got Hungary, Bulgaria, Moldova, Romania. So I cover quite a lot of what was the Eastern Bloc
Right. So, and what is kind of the up and coming region from the areas that you've spoken about just now?
Well, to be honest, I think they all are. I mean, they've all got really exciting, positive stories to tell about a new generation of wine producers, because they've all gone from that sort of mass market, collectivized, wine-flavoured alcoholic beverage in vast quantities to reinventing themselves as, you know, modern European nations with small, passionate producers, producing some really exciting stuff. I mean, Slovenia is one of my favourite countries. So much going on in Croatia. You know, I love what's happening in Bulgaria. Some exciting stuff in Hungary, particularly around Tokaj and several other regions. So, you know, I could talk endlessly on any of these subjects, really.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about where we are.
Yeah.
We're in Brda, as they say, or Bruda. Brda.
Yeah.
So I was following your presentation today. Excellent, by the way. Thank you so much for doing that. I've actually just started the diploma program. This is perfect. It was excellent. I'll cite you so that they'll give me some credit for that.
Okay.
So we talk about one of your slides. It started by saying why local varieties matter. And you outline the goods and the bads, the good and the ugly, a bit about why the indigenous grape varieties, which is something very, very relatable to Italian grape varieties, because there's so many.
Yeah.
And I thought this was a really good lesson for all Italian wine producers and Italian wine promoters and educators. So would you mind just giving us a small snapshot of what you've said today about that?
Yes, I think the good things about local grape varieties are that, you know, they're very much of their place. They've usually been selected because they're adapted to the growing conditions of a region, maybe to the culture of the people there. They've often got a long and authentic history. You know, if we look at Rebula here, it goes back to the Middle Ages as far as anybody can tell, so it's very connected to this region. If you can engage consumers with those varieties, then that automatically engages them with the region and the country, because it's something that belongs to this place. It can deliver a sense of place in the wines, and it can deliver, you know, if you're talking to the press and buyers who are looking for the next big thing, you know, authentic stories that can create a point of difference for a region, a country, whatever you're talking about. The downsides come with, you know, how hard it then becomes promoting a grape variety nobody's ever heard of from a wine region people don't really know about, country maybe they don't know is a wine producer. Sometimes they're difficult to pronounce, or they have difficult spellings or multiple names. Even this grape variety, Rebula, you know, it's over the border, it's Ribolla Jala. Even in Slovenia, some people call it Rebula, some people call it Rumeni Rebula, and you're just kind of making it confusing for the consumer. And sometimes I think there's also a problem with, you know, particularly in the domestic market, if it's a grape that's been used as a workhorse in previous generations, young people don't want to drink what their grandparents drank. Mm-hmm. They want the glamour of the Chardonnays and the Sauvignons and you know, something that's different to what. So you haven't got then a consumer base who's buying your wines to build on. So trying to create a reputation for a new generation of that kind of grape variety can be hard work.
Although, you know, I was very impressed and a little bit surprised by the end of the presentation today. Towards the end, one of the winemakers said, you know what, we're damn lucky because I can actually make the wine I like, wines I'd like to make, both in terms of winemaking and the vineyards, vineyard management, but also something I like to drink. And then if people like it, they can buy it. I thought this was such a novel idea in terms of a business model. What was your thought about that? I was a little shocked. I was, enamored.
Yeah, I think he's quite lucky.
Yeah.
To be fair to that particular winemaker, he has put a lot of effort over the years into doing tastings and showing off his wines and welcoming visitors and turning up in person to pour his wines at wine fairs. So he has put some effort into selling the wines.
Yeah, I felt like, he his philosophy was right, on the same page as the Gen Z life's philosophy. I have daughters, and they think like that. We should really enjoy our job. And we should really save the world, and everything has to be sustainable and all that. And I thought it was very, very interesting. So how can the Italian wine producers, do you think, can learn or let me put it to you another way. Do you think there are any takeaways from Rebula producers that the Italian wine industry can learn?
Yeah. Well, I think some of the things that these producers are doing well in this event is, first of all, there's a group of them working together, which is certainly in Central and Eastern Europe, where people were forced to be collectivised in the past, getting them to see the point that they need to work together to create a reputation for their region is really significant and really important. And what's great here is they're working across the border as well.
Yes, I'm mostly impressed about that. I think that's fantastic.
It is fantastic. It's great to see because it's so rare in this part of the world. I also think that, when you've got a region that's as beautiful as this, getting people to come here and see the vineyards and feel the terroir and feel the atmosphere and meet the people behind the wines means that you're going to go away feeling really connected. So next time you see Rebula on a wine list, I bet you order it.
Right. So that's very good. You also work with, you had another slide and you spoke about this. I guess you worked personally on the Ferment February campaign. And what was that about? What was the scope of this campaign and what were the results?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about Ferment February because it's another country and another region that's really using their native grape variety as a hook to, improve the reputation of ferment wines, but also to put their region and their country on the map. And so I wanted to just show, because I think there are parallels for Ribolla Gialla to learn from. So it's a scheme that's been happening in Hungary for about 10 years, and it came to the UK 3-4 years ago. So the first event was just about raising awareness, mostly getting press, just to get the word out there about this grape variety and the quality of wines it could produce. Then the following year we built on that by having a much bigger tasting, getting trade, so you can actually start to get listings. So Ferment is now appearing widely on listings.
Where did you do the tastings, in England or?
Yes, this was a programme in England, particularly in London. Then, of course, COVID came along, so we had to take a different approach. So we went online, but we did got a Michelin-starred chef to do some food matching and a MS for me, Master Sommelier for me to talk to. And again, built on the next step, so different styles, including single vineyard wines, which is just something that's starting to happen here with the producers identifying their top vineyards. I think you need to keep the lesson there, I think, is to keep building and not doing the same thing every year, but to add different themes and add different dimensions so that you're still giving your audience a new story to write.
So I see that the Rebula Consortium, who organized this event today, they're also matching the Michelin star chefs. Was that part of your kind of imprinting, or was that something they did their own?
I think that they did that themselves, because it was really big news for Slovenia that last year I think 6 chefs got Michelin stars for the first time, which is kind of a bit of a surprise that it's taken Michelin that long, because there's been some amazing food in Slovenia for quite a few years now. There's some really fantastic chefs and some fantastic ingredients here. So I think it was just an obvious, because it was such a celebration for the food scene in Slovenia, it was really obvious to bring food and wine together for them.
Yeah, I must agree. It was very nice what we've had today. So one last question, kind of cheeky question. While we were doing the tasting, you kept on referring to the quality of the wine as being non-oxidized and also clean, quote unquote, in a way. Now, currently, all this, I don't know if you've been following this trend with the clean wine, but we're talking, when they say clean, it's Cameron Diaz clean, right? There was this huge discussion we've had recently at in the clubhouse. So how important is that aspect in terms of equating it with quality for especially the orange wines here?
Yes, I'm definitely using clean in a different way, but I would say, all of these producers are actually making their wines in a way that would be pretty much recognised as clean by the Cameron Diaz type of movement. They're not using lots of additives and processing aids. It's basically, it's grapes. It's some of them using selected yeast, which, by the way, are selected from natural strains of yeast. There's no artificial manipulation, they're just selected strains of natural yeast. Some using indigenous fermentations, but nothing else, no complicated additives really, and usually just enough sulfites to keep the wine in good condition. None of the things that the clean wine movement in the US is reacting against, really.
So, yeah, I guess, I was just mostly impressed because, not knowing, if I were doing a blind tasting, right? Mm-hmm. You look at the color and you're like, the first thing that comes to your mind is oxidation, right?
Yeah.
And it's absolutely, what you said was absolutely correct. None of these wine had any hint of oxidation. And also, albeit they're using quite a bit of wood, used oak, but you don't sense the oak at all. Is that kind of a signature characteristic of the wines, the orange wines from this area?
I think that in my experience, most of the winemakers here are very careful about using oak very judiciously to add complexity and texture rather than overt oak flavours. So older oak, big barrels rather than small barriques, that sort of thing. Very small percentage of new oak. Because, if you've got great grapes, what you want in the bottle is the wine, not the oak.
So I'm going to ask you one last question, if you allow me. Yeah. So one of the, journalists asked about, why don't you use Slavonian oak more with Slavonian wine? And you had commented, but I didn't really understand. So I would like for you to clarify, if you can, what that means.
Okay, people get confused quite a lot between Slovenia, the country, and Slovenian, the adjective for the country, and Slavonia, which is a region in Croatia.
I think this is a really good WSET question. So I didn't think, I wanted you to clarify for our audience, because often I think even the wine, quote unquote, specialists make this mistake.
It's a mistake I've heard a few times, and the Slavonian oak comes from inland Croatia, a little bit into Serbia, but and it tends to be a certain sort of oak called Quercus robur, and it's very good. Italians use it a lot because it's really good for those big, thick staved casks.
Yeah, in Piemonte.
Yeah. It's not so good for barriques, so because it's very hard.
Well, you were so diplomatic about it, but I just wanted to put the parentheses around that question. So great. It was such a pleasure and such great honor to meet you, Carolyn, today. And thank you so much for joining us on the Italian Wine Podcast. That is Carolyn Gilby, not Gilby, Master of Wine, highly specialized in ex-Eastern European and Central European wines. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Okay, arrivederci. Ciao ragazzi.
Ciao.
And that's a wrap for this episode of On the Road Special Edition Slovenia with Stevie Kim. If you enjoyed this journey through the world of Rebula, Ribolla Gialla, please make sure you've subscribed to our channel and check out our other Travel To videos. You can also listen in to our podcast version. For more information, check out www.italianwinepodcast.com.
I don't know if you know Scienza. Have you heard of it? He's a wine genetist.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote about, it's kind of hard reading and maybe the translation is difficult, but this is not so heavy.
Yes, okay, no, I'd be very interested in that.
So, just
Grapevine
as a small,
genetics, definitely up my street.
Okay, great.
Yeah, okay.
Alrighty.
Lovely.
So let me just